Hello, World Wide Web. Welcome back to the Hanging With Web show here on HWWS Web TV. Thank you for logging on and for tuning in. Now, hit subscribe, come back over and over again. Every single weekday, we've got authors, artists, filmmakers, musicians, creative minds of all kinds. We are at Authors in a Box, sponsored by the Space Coast Writers Guild, and we are here at the Melbourne Square Mall, and we're hanging out right now with author Colonel Tony Deane, the author of Ramadi Declassified. So, Colonel, thank you so much for being with us today, sir.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Wow. See, for those of you guys watch the show for a while, you'll know that I don't think I've ever sat this close to a colonel without being in a lot of trouble. So, Colonel, thank you so much for hanging out with us today. Tell us a little bit about, well, let's start with the book, Ramadi Declassified. Tell us a little bit about the premise of the book, where you...
So the story is the story of the Battle of Ramadi in 2006. So at the time, it was the low point of the war, and things were going pretty bad. Actually, during the course of the summer is when they announced that Anbar was lost. But we got there, and I worked for a great guy named Colonel Sean McFarland at the time. And we had some new tactics where we pushed in the cities and set up combat outposts. But the story is the story of the people, right? So people say troops. So I try to put a face and a name to the troops, right? And so talk a little bit about the guys. I talk quite a bit about the guys who I served with, where they're from, and in some of their heroic actions. And it sounds pretty corny when people say, uncommon valor was common, but that was the coin of the realm there.
It is the truest thing I think about soldiers is that people forget that for yourself, for career soldiers, there's one expectation. The heroics of those guys that were 1 year earlier going to prom and 1 year later doing things that were extraordinary under intense, extraordinary circumstances. Uncommon valor is common when it is by those professionals.
Yeah, and it was an incredibly dangerous time. But the soldiers went out, and I mean we had a team of soldiers, Marines. We worked with the SEALs from time to time, Air Force guys, but everyone kind of pulled together, and they went out, and it was a bad time in the war. I mean we were still kicking indoors, and those kids went out every day. They took casualties, they went back out every day, and I thought their story needed to be told. The other thing that needed to be told, I thought, was while we were there, my unit started working very closely with some of the local tribal leaders and the sheikhs, and because of that, we were able to get them to increase the police presence, because when we got there was only 200 policemen in Ramadi, which is a town of about 400,000 people.
Wow. And
the most dangerous city in the world. 6 months later, we had 3,000 of them, 3,000 policemen, and those that couldn't join the police were joining, we call them neighborhood watches. And it was funny, the tide had turned. We got Sheikh Sattar to kind of reach out to the people, and we had a recruiting drive right before I left, and it was like the movies in World War II, and 12-year-old kids coming in with an ID saying they're 34 years old, and, get out of here, and they come back the next day with another fake ID, because the people of Ramadi realized that they couldn't live under the Al-Qaeda guys, and they rejected them. And when the dam broke and we got the population on our side, in September 2006, we were getting M1A1 tanks penetrated in the city, getting blown up. A year later, the Iraqis are running a 5K race down the street in shorts and T-shirts.
Wow, that's awesome.
All in a year.
And, it is. Those are the stories that it's time to tell. This is the fight against terrorism will never truly be over as long as one guy's out there that wants to do harm.
Exactly.
To us or our nation or to any nation, they're going to. However, our fight in this region of the world is the longest in American history, and I don't know about you, but I've noticed in that length of time, the profile has gradually scaled down more and more and more. and it's time for these stories because we don't want to forget those the bad days that led to the good days. We tend to forget a lot of.
No, exactly, and in a lot of what we did, I mean, it was, there's all this literature about counterinsurgency and how to win these wars. We came up with a very good model for it, and part of the reason that got me to write this was, they said, and the surge was important. Don't get me wrong, with General Petraeus and the surge, but the surge was successful because the awakening was going on before it. And then we tried to take that surge model and put it in Afghanistan, and that just didn't work. And,
again, it's the perfect storm. And what you guys were doing in Ramadi was creating an environment where that storm could take hold.
Exactly.
And if you don't create the environment first, then nothing you do will grab a toehold.
No, exactly.
And so, what made you decide that you were going to put this on paper? Well, I mean, a lot of guys come back, and you know this yourself. A lot of guys come back, and a lot of guys get home, and they don't even want to think about it, let alone write it down. Well, what made you say it was important enough to put it on paper?
So there are a number of book writing colonels in the Army. I was not one of them. So this was hard for me, not emotionally, but mainly just to write it. I mean, the first draft kind of had that Unabomber manifesto feel to it, but the story needed to be told, and a lot of it was I just couldn't be prouder of what my guys accomplished, and the heroism that they showed, and the story of Ramadi. I mean, the official Army history that came out a few months ago, it's in there. All the books written on the Iraq War, say this is the turning point, and I've read most of them, and none of them really. Never really got the story right. They talked about how terrible it was, and it was terrible. I mean, it was, 93 casualties in the brigade, KIAs, and 17 in my battalion in about 6 months. So it was really, really hard fighting. But the success that we had and how we got the success, how we achieved the success, which is the locals got to solve their own problems, and I felt that story needed to be told because I think a lot of people said they got it wrong. What's written in a lot of these books is just wrong.
Well, and I think one of the things that history tends to do is the longer period we're looking at, the shorter those moments of transition become. They start out as a chapter, and then they work their way down to a few pages until someday people will look back at this war, and with the exception of those people telling the in-depth stories, it'll be that paragraph. It'll just say the turning point in this, in Iraq, the turning point in this region. But the stories are no less important when that happens. I mean, right now, I think if we read a World War II book, there might be a paragraph in there that says, one of the turning points of World War II was Bastogne, where we proved to an army that really believed they were superior that we'd hold our own. If it cost us every last man, we'd hold our own. We'd hold our land. That moment changes their mind. This moment changed the minds. As our President Bush had said, the hearts and minds of the people around us had to change. You guys did that. You held your own in a place where nobody wanted you to. Except us at home. We were the home team cheering for the team out on the field. But out in the field, nobody wanted you guys to be successful, and you did. And you changed the minds, and you made the entire push successful and the surge successful because of the groundwork that you did. And to be relegated later on to a paragraph that says Ramadi was the turning point will be it was so terrible without the full stories.
And it's like I said, I mean, I dealt with the sheikhs a lot, but all my captains, and then just all the soldiers, that they were out there, they were kicking indoors, and they were judicious in their, thanks to good leadership, platoon sergeants, first sergeants, they were very judicious in their use of violence, right? And because the Al-Qaeda guys were very good at provoking us into violence, and they turn around and say, see, look, they're just a bunch of murderers. But my guys were very, very good at keeping, being professional and doing what they had to do. And
in an environment that professionalism is it is what we are so proud of our troops for today.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think we often forget how difficult it is. This is a violent environment. War is a blood sport. It's a violent environment. Maintaining a sense of professionalism in an environment that is designed to make you hyper intense, not an easy task.
No.
And the more testosterone you put in that room, the harder that task is about to become. I never envied our leaders because y'all had hard jobs. You put a bunch of really fired up, motivated, and ready to do violence people in an environment where the environment was going to make us do violence, and say, now take it here and stop. And this is where the line for a professional is.
Yeah.
Now, coming from your background and sitting down at the keyboard for the first time and deciding, like you said, you're not one of those Army officers. You're not one of those officers that sat down and said, books are my thing.
Yeah.
What was the most difficult part of the process for you of writing your story?
Well, I tried to write it not just for a military audience, but for a broad appeal. So trying to, tone it back. And
man, I can't even do that in daily life.
Yeah, and that jargon runs deep, right? So trying to peel that back was hard.
By the time you're a colonel, you've got a lot of years. I got 4, and my daily vocabulary gives me away.
Yeah.
There's nothing you can do about it. Once it's in you, right?
Yeah.
And you had to do that for 500 pages.
Yeah, and so part of it, it's a thick book, but it's a quick read because a lot of it, I felt the need that trying to put it into people's own words or how I remember it, and I think it's pretty close. There's probably a little more profanity that was used than is actually in the book, but it's people talking to people, and you think of the military, sometimes it's easy to look at them on TV and say, they're kind of, robots or just, the soldiers, this image of a soldier.
Paragon image.
Yeah, and it really is people, and so the combat's very personal, right? It's personal relationships. Do you trust your boss? Do you trust the guy on the left? Do you trust, that's why, people call each other brother, right? Because you've established that trust. And so you had to figure out, how to talk to people. And I think it's a little bit different book in that because it really is kind of the conversations that that Joe has when they're standing out on a checkpoint or
making that demonstrable to a wider audience.
Yeah, exactly.
What would you say was the biggest challenge about taking that again? Those conversations out on the checkpoint they can get pretty raw.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't kind of get that. I mean, on daily life, daily life we just had a conversation with another author. We said, here in the U.S. we've won the genetic lottery. We were all born in a place with one of the highest standards of living and regard for rule of law and things in the world. Mm-hmm. And a combat zone is anything but. And so we get a little primal out there. How do you translate that for a wider audience? What was your biggest challenge there?
I think just, so much happened. I mean, this book could be 10 times thicker, kind of distilling down kind of the key events of what's really important. And literally, our guys were getting in contact 10 times a day. I mean, being shot at or being blown up 10 times a day. And every soldier in my battalion, all 600 of them have some sort of story that could be told, and some of them have 100 of them because they were in the infantry units kicking in doors. But so to kind of, connect the dots, so there is a story, and and it's a book that won't break your foot if you drop it on your foot too. Yeah. But there were some real key turning points, and we. We ended up having to take over a university. We raided a mosque. We were trying to get the Iraqi army to do more of the work. And trying to get the Iraqi police to actually step up, and then working with the sheikhs. So there was a lot going on. And oh, by the way, we're taking casualties every day, and you know,
Yeah.
in contact.
Constant
So
contact.
trying to, you know, there was just a lot, and then trying to put, you know, that down in some sort of straight line and have it, you know, 500 pages.
What are readers saying so far?
You know,
is it translating well for that audience?
we have got, I have gotten great reviews. I mean, if you know, we're on Amazon, and I actually some from my website, TonyDeane.com. A little shameless, you know, I defended democracy for years
that's
now.
Right. It is awesome, guys. What I want you all to do is we're going to drop links down below in the description to this video. I want you to click the hell out of those links. Go check out this book and go check out the books like it. These are the stories that need to be told today. This is modern history. This is history happening. Yeah.
So I mean, this is the same time, like you know, American Sniper. I mean, Kyle was there. You know, Jocko was the SEAL commander, and so you know, there's been a lot written on this. But getting the story to so people read it and understand it, because it is a lot, and it is our history. I mean, and you know, we also got to understand that, you know, for everybody who says, hey, we need to go invade another country, you know, this is what it means. Day to day, there's some 18-year-old kid that's out there, you know, sitting on a checkpoint, kicking in a door, you know, trying to train an Iraqi policeman for the next 10, 50, 100 years.
Yeah, it is. It is. You don't know how long. That's just, I think people forget. At the end of World War II, the only place that was left occupied was Japan. Ongoing process for decades. Here we are, still an occupying force in different places, because the civilians need to be trained, the police need to be trained, the rule of law needs to be instilled, and the bad guys are still out there somewhere.
Yeah, and you know, in Germany, I used to talk to Sheikh Sitar, who was Sitar was this very charismatic sheikh, and he carried a chrome-plated Colt 45 Texas Sesquicentennial 6-shooter. I mean, he had a real flair to him. But I'd always say to him, I said, Sitar, why can't this be like Germany and Japan? Why can't this be like Germany and Japan? And you know, he actually, when he gave his speech to the Awakening, you know, the Awakening meeting with the sheikhs, he actually said that. You know, you know, you know, the bad thing is, if we're going to go someplace, we're there. I mean, we're there for 100 years. We just got to understand that.
And that's not new. Places where it's successful. I think that's the thing that we tend to forget about our history, is that we were in Japan after the war. We were in Germany.
In Italy,
I went through Checkpoint Charlie in the 80s when I first visited Europe for the first time as a teenager. So we were there. You know, it was a long-term obligation that you've created. And the Middle East is no different. And the process the successes that you're talking about have to be copied and pasted, or you can't be successful.
And you know, actually I kind of start off the book talking about this. I mean, and I'm a Desert Storm vet, but in a way that was almost a bad thing, because people thought we could win wars in 96 hours. And and you know, I mean, the Army got a lot of good stuff.
I tell people all the time, I have the utmost respect for the young guys today. I really, truly do. And it's a different world, though. This is, you know, we tend to think that modern warfare can be done like that. It was a one-off at best. And a very happily, by the way.
Oh, no,
for all the guys that we didn't lose and all the friends that I still have. I'm very grateful for that. But it is still World War I, World War II, and our current conflict. These are examples of thousands of hours of, you know, tons and tons of munitions, thousands of men. And women alike now. And it is, and those, again, I love that expression that you use, and I've heard it before, and I'll never not love it. But it is everyday extraordinary acts of heroism that are, they're ordinary. And I, you know, defer to great writers better than you and I will ever be, right back to Dick Winters. You know, we may not be heroes, we served in the company of heroes. And those guys are there. So, Colonel, thank you for your service. Thank you for your book. Thank you for your time. We've been hanging out with author Colonel Tony Deane, the author of Ramadi Declassified. Let me pop that cover up there. Awesome. Check the links down below. Okay, click on there, guys. Check out this story. Thank you to our partners and friends at Famous Faces and Funnies, Josh Bauer at J. Bauer Art for all the art that's on our set this weekend. Our great friends at Space Coast Comics and Indie Originals, our friends at at Hearts Helping Others of Central Florida. Bea and her crew over there, families helping other families in Central Florida. It's amazing. Thank you to Brevard Film and Talent, and to our new friends at Echo Arts and Gifts for this awesome set piece here that they gave us for the day to hang on to. Thank you for logging on and tuning in. Subscribe, click the links below. Come back to see who we're hanging with next. Awesome, man.
Thanks.
Thank you so much. That was awesome, Tony.
Yeah.
Wow.